All right, so now who read for Miss Webb before? Who was Mrs. Webb? Was that you, Morgan? Okay. And where was my Emily? Good. And where was my George? Oh, okay. So why don't you read for George? All right. And then who was my Mr. Webb? Oh, you're going to be talking to yourself. Okay. So actually, I'm going to give Charlie Mr. Webb because Charlie has that good adult voice. And you're going to read for George. Okay. And Charlie's going to have to put his laptop up. He's sorry about that because he's probably Netflix binging something.
Actually, I'm not.
I suspect that's what Charlie does.
No.
All right.
I'm writing something.
Oh, okay. All right. So we have the wedding. Now let me show you what this would look like. Okay. So the stage manager is going to play the minister, and he's going to be at the very back, which works for me in COVID, right? He's going to be at the very back. And he's going to like officiate the wedding while looking out over the audience. Well, George and Emily are going to actually come up from the back. Bailey, put your phone up. You don't want me to confiscate it, I know.
All right.
They're going to come up through the back, and they're going to enter like, you know, the bride would come down the aisle in a wedding anyway, okay? But the audience member, or the folks who congregated for the wedding are going to sit with their backs to the audience, and when they talk, they stand up and face the audience, okay? So remember microcosm, remember these folks are representative of like all folks everywhere, and we have Emily who comes in, and before she enters like the area of the church, she stops. And actually, scratch that. George is the one that comes up first. George comes up and he has that whole deer in the headlights look, and his mom's going to notice that he is real nervous, and she's going to go kind of give him a pep talk, okay? All right, so Miss Webb speaks first. She stands up and turns to the audience and says, go ahead, Miss Webb.
Are we on page 44?
Wherever she says, I don't know why on earth I should be crying, okay?
I don't know why on earth I should be crying. I suppose there's nothing to cry about. It came over me at breakfast this morning when there was Emily eating her breakfast as she's done for 17 years, and now she's going off to eat in someone else's house. I can't suppose that's it.
If they're 17?
17, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like 18. I thought they graduated high school at least.
Well, you know, I graduated high school at 17. I was almost 18, but go ahead.
And Emily, she suddenly said, I can't eat another mouthful, and she put her head down on the table and she cried. I've got to say it, you know, there's something downright cool about sending our girls out into marriage this way. I hope some of her girlfriends have told her a thing or two. It's cool. I know, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I went into it as blind as a bat myself. The whole world's wrong. That's what's the matter. There they come.
Okay, so we find out a couple of things. One, this whole thing, and you might want to make a note of this, guys. This whole thing about Emily eating breakfast for 17 years, basically, the same habit day after day after day, something that you would definitely take for granted. She says, I don't know why I'm crying. I guess it's because that life's over. She realizes Emily will never, eat breakfast as a part of this household again. Because even if she does come to eat breakfast, it's not that she came downstairs being like, a child, okay? So she realizes that time is moving on. And that's something that this play is very much about, realizing these moments, okay? And she said Emily set her head down and she cried too. Then she says something really interesting, y'all. She says, I hope some of Emily's friends have gotten a hold of her and told her a few things because I went into it blind as a bat myself. What do you think she's talking about in terms of what, she hopes Emily has some understanding of what's going on?
The honeymoon.
The honeymoon! Absolutely! Because she never had the birds and the bees talk with her daughter. I know. So her mom is saying, I hope some of her girlfriends have told her a thing or two, went into it blind as a bat myself. I mean, if you don't know about, like, let's just say the mechanics of it all, imagine how surprised that might be, right? How surprising that might be. Now, the baseball guys are there to kind of heckle George, and they're like, George, yeah, look at him, fellas. He looks scared to death. Yeah, George, don't look so innocent, old geezer. We know what you're thinking. And listen to this, y'all. Don't disgrace the team, big boy, all right? So,
That's what the boys are for.
Now, the stage manager comes in and says, all right, that'll do. That's enough of that. There used to be an awful lot of that kind of thing at weddings in the old days, Roman later, but you know, we're more civilized, so they say. Now, George comes in, okay? He's about to step up into the church, the stage, and Miss Gibbs sees him and says,
George, what's the matter?
Ma, I don't want to grow old. Why is everybody pushing me so?
Why, George, you wanted it.
No, Ma, listen to me.
No, George. You're a man now.
Listen, Ma, for the last time I asked you, all I want to do is be a fella.
George, if anyone should hear you, now stop. Why? I'm ashamed of you.
Where's Emily?
George, you gave me such a turn.
Cheer up, Ma. I'm getting married.
Let me catch my breath a minute.
all right, so this is like an abrupt change. And again, it took me a while to kind of figure this one out, but he's like, I don't want to grow old. I mean, that moment when you decide, realize that you're an adult, it kind of sucks. I'm not gonna lie. All right, I was teaching high school at 21, but I was in denial because all my friends were still in college, okay? And so I went a good 3 or 4 years, you know, just kind of denying and not really feeling like an adult, even though I had an adult job, and I was pretty good at it too. But when I hit 25, I had a hard time. I've never had trouble with like the decades. You know what I mean? No, see, 40 wasn't a big deal. 30 wasn't a big deal. I turned 50 this year. Not a big deal. But let me tell you something. It's the halfway points that get me. You know what I mean? When I have to like say, ooh, if we were rounding up. Okay? So 25 hits and I'm like, oh, damn. I'm an adult, right? And it, you know, that younger self, I had to kind of put it to bed, right? And that was tough. This is George's moment. He's young, but this was a long time ago, and people, I think, grew up fast. Well, I don't know, in some ways faster, in other ways not. Okay. But this is George saying, all I want to do is be a kid, and his mom is like, dude, grow up. You chose this, man up, and you know what? He does. He says, okay. And then he's all right. So here's the thing, again, microcosm. So George's doubts in this moment where he's like, I gotta grow up, that's something that everybody's gonna face. And some of y'all won't realize that you have become an adult till you like 45, okay? But when you do, you'll have that moment and you're like, oh, okay, right? So there we go. Go ahead, pick up where y'all left off.
Now, Mom, you say Thursday nights. Emily and I are coming over to dinner every Thursday night. You'll see. Ma, what are you crying for? Come on, we gotta get ready for this.
Now, Emily's gonna have her moment. She's gonna come up, and she's a little bit more dramatic, so she stops. And instead of her mother coming, it's the opposite, because they kind of mirror each other, right? It's the dad. So, Emily.
I never felt so alone in my whole life. And George over there looking so, I hate him. I wish I were dead. Paul.
Wait.
Yeah, I know. So she's a little bit more dramatic. Go ahead, Mr. Webb.
Emily, now don't get upset.
But Papa, I don't want to get married.
Shh, Emily, everything's all right.
Why can't I stay for a while just as I am? Let's go away.
No, Emily. Now stop and think a minute.
Don't you remember that you used to say, all the time you used to say, all the time, that I was your girl. There must be lots of places we can go to. I'll work for it. I could keep house.
Yeah, she's like, come on, Dad, let's just go, right? Go ahead, Mr. Webb.
Shh. You mustn't think of such things. You're just nervous, Emily. George, will you come here a minute?
Go ahead, still
Oh,
you.
sorry. Why you're marrying the best young fellow in the world? George is a fine fellow.
But Papa,
I'm giving away my daughter, George. Do you think you can take care of her?
Mr. Webb, I want to try. Emily, I'm gonna do my best. I love you, Emily. I need you.
well, if you love me, help me. All I want is someone to love me.
I will, Emily. Emily, I'll try.
And I mean forever. Do you hear? Forever. Ever.
All right, so a couple of things. Again, love this scene. George has such a pure soul. I mean, Emily's dad calls him over. Emily, of course, is like upset, right? And her dad puts the, hand on, his future son-in-law's shoulder, and he says, I'm giving you my daughter. Are you going to take care of her? And instead of being like, oh yeah, I got this, right? I mean, George says, I think what is the best possible response. And what is that? I want to, and I'm gonna try, right? I'm gonna do my best. And so Emily feels better, George feels better, and then they're gonna, of course, go on with the wedding. Mr. Webb. Come, they're waiting for us.
Mr. Webb?
Come, baby.
Oh, come, they're waiting for us. Now you know it'll be alright. Come quick.
Do you, George, take this woman, Emily, to be your wedded wife to have... Okay, so, Cameron, I want you to read for Miss Soames, okay? Now, Miss Soames is the one that was kind of gossiping with the other women, and she's given really the final word in this act. Miss Soames. Do you see it, Cameron? Perfectly.
Perfectly lovely wedding. Loveliest wedding I ever saw. Oh, do love a good wedding, don't you? Doesn't she make a lovely bride?
I do.
Do you, Emily, take this man, George, to be your wedded husband?
Don't know when I've seen such a lovely wedding, but I always cry. Don't know why it is, but I always cry. I just like to see young people happy, don't you? Oh, I think it's lovely.
The ring, the kiss. I've married over 200 couples in my day. Do I believe in it? I don't know. Em marries in millions of them. The cottage, the go-kart, which I think is actually a car from back in the day. The Sunday afternoon drives in the Ford. The first rheumatism, that's arthritis, y'all. The grandchildren, the second rheumatism, the deathbed, the reading of the will. So he talks about through the whole life, right? Once in 1,000 times, it's interesting. Well, let's have the wedding march, and the bride and groom are coming down the aisle, as Miss Soames says.
Aren't they a lovely couple? Oh, I've never been to such a nice wedding. I'm sure they'll be happy. I always say happiness. That's the great thing. The important thing is to be happy.
That's all the second act, folks. 10 minutes intermission. So Miss Soames, and you might want to make a note on your notes that Miss Soames, who ends the second act, she's not supposed to be the wisest character, but she really does say something pretty profound. I mean, it's simplistic, but powerful. She says the important thing is to be happy. And that is, isn't that really the truth? And of course, we all find our happiness in different ways, right? All right, Act 3. So Act 3 is about the dead, okay? Now, it's set in a cemetery, and what makes our town, again, unique is that the dead are given a voice. Okay? So we have, hang on, they can in our town, all right? So we're going to have, seats that are in a couple of rows down, stage right. And you would have the actors come in, and they would take their seat. And the actors that take their seat are the characters who have died. And where they sit is their grave. Exactly. Okay? And again, we said way back at the beginning when I talked about this play that it is a play that discusses like traditional themes, but it is staged in a non-traditional manner. Well, here we have the dead who are given a voice, okay? All right, so here we go. Stage manager says this time 9 years have gone, so make a note. This is set in 1913. It's the summer of 1913. Gradual changes in Grover's Corners. Horses are getting rarer. Farmers coming into towns and forts. Everybody locks their house doors at night. Ain't been any burglars in town yet, but everybody's heard about them. You'd be surprised, though, on the whole, things don't change much around here. Now, this is certainly an important part of Grover's Corners. It's on a hilltop, a windy hilltop, lots of sky, lots of cloud, lots of sun, moon, and stars. You come up here on a fine afternoon, you can see range on range of hills. Now, I'm going to skip down just a bit. There, down a ways, is Grover's Corners. Yes, beautiful spot up here, mountain laurel and lilacs. Often wonder why people like to be buried in Woodlawn and Brooklyn when they might pass the same time up here in New Hampshire. Now, oh, there are the old stones, 1620, 1680. Strong-minded people that come a long way to be independent. In summertime, people walk around looking at the funny words on the tombstones, don't do any harm. Genealogists come up here from Boston and get paid by city folk for looking up their ancestors. They want to make sure they're daughters of the American Revolution or of the Mayflower. Yes, that don't do any harm either. Whenever you come across this human race, there's layers and layers of nonsense. Now, over there are some Civil War veterans, iron flags on their graves. New Hampshire boys had a notion that the Union ought to be kept together, though they'd never seen more than 50 miles of it themselves. All they knew was the name, friends, the United States of America. The United States of America, and they went and died about it. So that's, again, understatement. Again, about war, right? These guys wanted the United States to say united, and they went and died about it. Now, here's the new part of the cemetery. Here's your friend Miss Gibbs and Mr. Stimson and Miss Soames, who enjoyed the wedding so, and a lot of others. Editor Webb's boy Wally, whose appendix burst while he was on a Boy Scout trip to Crawford Notch. Yes, an awful lot of sorrow sort of quieted down up here. People just wild with grief have brought their relatives up to this hill. We all know how it is. And time and sunny days and rainy days and snow. We're glad they're in a beautiful place. And we're coming up here ourselves when our fit is over. What's he reminding the audience? Yeah, I mean, everybody follows the same journey, right? Now, there's some things we know, but we don't take them out and look at them very often. We all know that something is eternal. It ain't houses, ain't names, ain't even the earth or stars. Everybody knows in their bones that something is eternal. And that something has to do with human beings. All the greatest people ever lived have been telling us that for 5,000 years, yet you'd be surprised how people are always losing hold of it. There's something way down deep that's eternal about every human being. What's he talking about? The soul. Absolutely. You know as well as I do, the dead don't stay interested in us living people long. Gradually, they lose hold of the earth and the ambitions they had, the pleasures and the things they suffered and the people they loved. They get weaned away from the earth. That's the way I put it, weaned away. And they stay here while the earth, part of them burns away, burns out. And all that time, they slowly get indifferent to what's going on in Grover's Corners. They're waiting for something that they feel is coming, something important and great. Aren't they waiting for the eternal part in them to come out clear? Some of the things they're going to say will maybe hurt your feelings, but that's the way it is. Mother and daughter, husband, wife, enemy, money and miser. All those terribly important things grow pale around here. So let me tell you that I think he's reminding us that when it comes to like life or death, all the little petty disagreements are very thoroughly put into perspective, right? I guess it was probably 10 years ago or so that I had a student that was in a bad accident on her way to school. It was one of those icy days that they did not call off school. If you want to know why school is called so quickly now, if they think they're going to get ice or snow, it's because of this kid and the fact that 10 years ago she was on the icy roads and had an accident and was in a coma for months.
2013.
Right? Do you know?
2013.
Yeah, Studi Jawahar. She was one of my yearbook kids. Great kid. We thought we'd lost her. She had very slim chance of recovery. She has recovered, okay? But when Studi was in that situation, it was the first time that I'd had a student, I'd had kids die, okay? But it was the first time that I'd had a student who was just hanging on by a thread for a prolonged period of time. And in that time period, that whole spring, everything else for almost everybody at the school was really put into perspective. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to life and death, all the petty little gripes that you've got with your friends, that doesn't matter. He's reminding us of that. Okay? All right, we'll pick up here tomorrow. Now, Wednesday, y'all are going to be doing an in-class essay.